Hello, my name is John. I work at a hotel, night shift. It's 2:24 a.m. right now, and it is completely dead. Well, not entirely dead. I tried to make a similar video just a few minutes ago, got interrupted by a customer about 10 minutes in. It's a little embarrassing because I got very silly about chickens, but I think that I can make it through this time. So, to recap, my goal, a completely improvised story. 30 minutes, no writing prompt. I just start talking. Whatever comes into my head, that's the story. It's a stupid idea, but it amuses me. See, and my other goal for this is to stop using filler words like and you know. That last video was super embarrassing. I'm going to post it, and you're going to see how embarrassing it was. I'm going to chalk this up to me being nervous and to the difficulty of speaking extemporaneously. Also, if you hear me go, that's me trying to cover for an going to reveal the secrets of improvised amateur storytelling. Okay, so starting fresh, using none of the material from my other video, no preparation, no prompt. Once upon a time, there was a magical land where mushrooms walked as men. The story's not about a mushroom that walked as a man, although one might show up. It's just a background detail about the kingdom. In this kingdom, there lived a princess. The princess was perhaps not as savvy about political matters as she should be, because her father was a king, a tyrant, someone who ruled both man and mushroom man alike with an iron fist, probably harder on the mushroom men, simply because a mushroom is softer, so iron would hurt them more, but not popular amongst anyone. His cruel taxes, his habit of riding out on his horse, hunting mushroom man for sport. There are perhaps some racial and ethnic divisions between human beings and the mushroom people, but they came together in their mutual disregard for the king. No one dared express that openly, because the king had spies everywhere, including a magical raven who was perhaps bribed into the position, being originally a witch's familiar who escaped to take more lucrative opportunities in the oppressive spy for the regime field. Maybe recruited other woodland animals to help him. So this witch really screwed up, going around teaching the animals to spy, and then having her animal companions defect to support the hegemony of the police state created by this cruel king. But the princess didn't know any of this. She was naive politically. She'd lived her whole life in the castle and was sheltered from events. She never even met a mushroom man. She had a lot of mushroom dinners. She found mushroom very delicious, but she didn't know that the king's mushroom feasts, famed throughout the land for their decadence and cruelty, were in fact had their origins in the hunting of sapient creatures. As far as she knew, it was just a strange flesh that her father seemed to favor. And the chefs prepared it well, sautéed in a nice butter, from cows who didn't know how to talk. They weren't part of the talking animal aperture. I can't pronounce that word. That's secret police. Let's call them that. The talking animal secret police. Although, they weren't that secret. It was an open secret. People in the kingdom were afraid to speak their mind in case an animal was overheard. But that doesn't do the king much good unless people know that the animals can overhear. I mean, you have a secret police that's too secret, and nobody's afraid of them. So, the rumor amongst the peasantry was that the animals could speak, although the more skeptical among the peasants probably dismissed these claims as fantastical, and turning to the mushroom men and saying, can you believe this? An animal that talks? What do they think they are? A human or mushroom? And the mushroom men would say, you are completely right. Only humans and mushrooms talk. Animals are dumb beasts. But the princess didn't know that mushrooms talked, because she's only met humans. The only mushroom she's ever encountered was on a dinner plate. Perhaps Grimm, the unwitting participant in cannibalism. Yeah, I think it's cannibalism if they're both intelligent. I mean, technically, it's only cannibalism if you eat your own species. But I think that gifted with the power of speech and apprehension, the ability to love and live and fear and have relationships, that a mushroom and a human are really they're really the same underneath. It's a spiritual truth that goes deeper than mere biology. So this was a common opinion amongst the populace as well, that though there were tensions between human and mushroom, they came together in recognition of their shared humanity, I suppose. Perhaps it's a little arrogant to call ourselves human and then use humanity as a general description of the life of the soul, but given the limitations of our language, and perhaps terminology will have to change if we ever discover sapient mushrooms, humanity is as good a word as any. Their shared humanity. The princess sheltered from all this, lived a life of privilege, but she was good at heart. How she managed to be good at heart while being raised by a cruel king? Well, the king was very cruel, but he was also very vain. And so the stories he told the princess about the world, they emphasized his kindness and mercy, even though those were qualities that were not at all apparent to any member of the kingdom. Once he had a peasant before his court who got into a dispute with another peasant, and instead of delivering a fair verdict, he disenfranchised the peasant for wasting his time with such a frivolous matter. So, but when he told the princess the story, he made it sound like he was much more benevolent than he was, delivering justice to these scallywags who would dare abuse the system for their own ends. So the princess, having been told a very selective and edited version of history by her cruel king of a father, managed to become very kind but very misguided about the world. And she was constantly chafing at the restrictions of living in the palace. She didn't like that she couldn't go out and see, the kingdom for herself. She would look out her window and she would see like the fantastical fairy lights from over Mushroom Town, and she would wonder what was going on over there. She would yearn for a time when she could explore, she could find the end of the rainbow. There wasn't a very good understanding of physics in this kingdom either, so she didn't know nor did the scholars, the king's court, the scientists, such as they were, the alchemists, the charlatans, the astrologers, but the occasional natural philosopher with certain valid observations as well. They didn't know the origin of the rainbow. They didn't know that it was a refraction of light and that it never touched down. So it was a common misconception that you could find where it touched the ground. And the princess, believing that because she was a well-educated a princess, despite the gaps in her understanding of the current political situation, her understanding of natural philosophy and theology, the history of poetry, perhaps, other things that a princess might know, was quite comprehensive. She had all of the very best tutors who could be intimidated by the king to be selective in their educational standards. So not the best that there were, because those men and women, they had too much integrity to submit to the king's edited version of history. But of those that were so afraid because their families were kept captive in the dungeon and said, "You teach my daughter an accurate but not too accurate version of natural philosophy and history, or I will slay your family," those were her tutors. The best that bribery and intimidation could buy. So her understanding of the rainbow was equivalent to that of the very best understanding of the rainbow available to anyone in the kingdom. And it was wrong. She thought she could visit the source of the rainbow. No one had ever found it, but she had romantic dreams of being an explorer who was the first. And that is the precipitating incident of the story. She yearned to get out of the castle, to see the horizon, and to find the source of the rainbow. But of course her father wouldn't let her, because he was too afraid of shattering her illusions about him. She thought he was a just and even-handed monarch who always made wise decisions, was courageous on the field of battle, and temperate with his appetites. But she didn't know that the mushroom men were hunted like animals, or that the animals were corrupted to be the enemy of man, mushroom and human alike, and the enemy of woman too. I mean, this kingdom had a gender equality that was not historical, but this isn't a historical kingdom. This is a fantasy kingdom. So, some of the animals who were the secret police were female animals, because that's possible. Anyone can work for the system to help a tyrant crush the population underfoot, quite literally in the case of the mushroom men, figuratively in the case of humans, except for all those humans that were trampled by horses, of course. The brave log cutter who was sheltering the mushroom men in his cabin, and the king rode out with a regiment on one of his usual hunts and came up to the cabin and said, "Log cutter, come out and deliver the mushroom men. We know you're hiding them." And the log cutter said, "I don't know what you're talking about, your majesty. I am but a simple log cutter. To defy your will would be too dangerous for a humble man such as myself." And the king, being genre savvy enough to know when he's being fucked with, just says, "Men, trample that man and run him down with your horses." And they did, and it was a horrifying scene. but only, and the mushroom families that were being sheltered were trampled to death as well, burned alive as they cowered in the log cutter's cabin. Although one young mushroom man, a mushroom boy really, survived, sheltering under the bodies of his parents. And the fire burned out before he could be killed. He was severely dried out, though. Being a mushroom, instead of human, their physiology is different. They react to fire differently. They don't worry about smoke inhalation, but they do worry about dehydration to a greater degree. So he was a shriveled mushroom when he came out. He still bears the scars to this day. He's going to meet up with the princess in a few minutes, unless I ramble on about the currency of the kingdom or something. What did they use as currency? Not gold. I mean, that's a little on the nose, isn't it? They used a modern currency. The king was very progressive in some ways, and one of the ways was the adaptation of a paper currency backed by the kingdom's bank, which helped with the financing of many public works, and perhaps centuries from now, the inheritors of the kingdom will remember this particular king for the roads and aqueducts he built, and not for his terrible personal habits. It'll be a big controversy, some young professor of history, after the discipline had been reformed to be more scientific and more accurate, would be looking through the archives and say, that one king, he was really kind of a bastard. Maybe we shouldn't honor him with so many public statues. And people would get up in arms about this. They would say, what? He introduced paper currency. He was a far-reaching monarch whose effects on the kingdom were mostly positive. And he would say, what about the animal secret police? And he would get shouted down and say, everyone knows animals can't talk. Certainly not since the last witch died 1,000 years ago. And then he would be looking through the archives, seeing if he could find the witch that caused all of these. And he would be derided academically for many years for his talking animal secret police theory, until one day he found a diary or something from the witch hidden under a stack of books, otherwise of little interest to anyone but historians, that would describe the rediscovery of witchcraft for a brief period, from 20 years before the story began to about 10 years after it ends. So that historian then would make a big deal about diminishing the legacy of the king.